Need to submit a payment? Here's how to do it. Housing charges are broken into 3 categories: application fees, rent charges, and miscellaneous charges. Make sure to pay all rent by the indicated deadline for the term in question to avoid any late fees. Payments are due by the tuition deferment payment deadline for the term in question, as determined by Student Financial Services. All financial information, including charges, balances, and deferment statuses, can be viewed in OASIS. OASIS accepts MasterCard, Discover credit and debit cards, and electronic checks. How to make a payment in OASIS. Step 1. From the USF homepage, select My USF. Step 2. Log in with your USF email and password. Step 3. Select My Resources. Step 4. Select OASIS Student from the drop-down menu. Step 5. Select Student. Step 6. Select Tuition and Fees. Step 7. Select Student Bill Payment. You will then be redirected to the USF payment portal. Note that it may take a few minutes to load. Please do not click back. Step 8. Once you're in the portal, select Make a Payment. Step 9. Once you are directed to the next screen, you'll be able to see all the charges on your account for housing, meal plan, tuition, and fees, and any other charges which may apply to you. All charges will be listed individually for your convenience. If you are a new USF student, you will see a $200 admission deposit credit. This credit can only be used for tuition for enrolled students. Housing application fees, rent, or damages must be paid by selecting Pay by Line Item. Once you select what you are paying for and enter the specific amounts you want to pay, proceed through the form to submit the payment. Thank you for your payment. Get ready to live the Bulls life.
Hello and welcome to USF Housing Live. I'm your host, Elizabeth Fry, the Assistant Director for Communications with Housing and Residential Education at the beautiful University of South Florida in Tampa. We have an exciting episode planned tonight to help you prepare for college. And throughout the season, we'll be talking about on-campus housing, dining, financial aid, and so much more. So be sure to join us every other Wednesday evening at 6 p.m. to hear from campus experts and also have your questions answered live on the show. So tonight we'll be joined by the Campus Director of Financial Aid. If you have any questions for him, be sure to drop your questions in the comments from wherever you're watching, and we'll be sure to answer as many as we can throughout tonight's show. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Damian Lovett. He is the Campus Director of Financial Aid at USF. Damian, how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. We are so excited to have you here with us today. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to start with the easiest question first, and why don't you just tell us who you are and what you do here at USF?
Well, I am Damian Lovett. I work in the Office of Financial Aid. I have been there since 1997. So I'm not counting the years anymore, so we're just counting the days. And then I do just about everything within the office.
So we're talking to the right person. You know a thing or two.
Yes.
To say the least. So when it comes to financial aid, let's just start at the beginning. When should students apply for financial aid?
So 2 things. So students should be applying now. So if we have a student, if you are a student that's coming in the summer term, you should be doing the 2023-24 FAFSA that is out now. And if you're continuing on in the fall or starting in the fall, complete the 2024-25 FAFSA. So one warning is that those 2 applications are completely different, but you do have to do both of them, especially if you are a student starting in the summer term.
Okay, so both of those applications need to be filled out. That's a very important point. When students get here, they're starting in the fall. When is that first fall semester bill due?
Well, fall semester bills and every semester bill is due at the end of the first week of classes. So there will be plenty of information and plenty of warnings about that. Once you come back for orientation, we'll give you the exact dates as to when those will fall. The academic calendar is still being set officially for the fall semester, but we will have those dates by the time the orientation season rolls around. So rule of thumb, first week of classes, end of that week, bills are due.
Is there anywhere that you guys have those dates posted if students need that reminder?
So those dates are actually going to be posted inside of Oasis. So students will have access to those all the time. If students are receiving financial aid, then those fees will be deferred until later in the semester. That will also be published in Oasis, and students are emailed those dates as deadlines as reminders.
And you kind of already led into the next question on the list, deferments. What deferments are there, and how would a student be able to qualify for those?
Yeah, so deferments are basically our way of extending the payment due dates for students that are receiving financial aid. So since the bills are due at the end of the first week of classes, we don't release the money to students to apply to the bill until the 7th day of classes. So by those dates, the payment will be late. And if the payment is late, the student is canceled from classes. So we don't want that to happen. So we will automatically defer the payment of the financial aid, the bill for the students until 7 weeks into the term. So you get a 7-week extension as opposed to having it due on the first week.
Okay. It's important to pay attention to those dates. Is there any account in which family members can access students' financial information if they want to stay up to date with what's going on with their student?
Well, unfortunately, here at the university, there isn't a parent portal that parents can access to get that information, so everything is secured behind Oasis. And the only way that the parents can get in there is if they are looking over the shoulder of their student when they are logging in. So always the rule of thumb is keep the lines of communication open with your student, and as they start to get that information delivered from the school, then to just make sure that they are following through, reading their emails, checking Oasis. As long as they're doing that regularly and following whatever the information is, they shouldn't have any problems getting through the system.
Just keeping that communication open. What about with minors? When it comes to financial aid for minors, is there anything special that you have to consider?
So if the student is not yet 18 years of age, and they are a college student, they can enter into contracts with the university for various services and apply for financial aid, things of that nature. The only caveat for minors is if the student happens to be 13 years or younger for financial aid purposes, then they are not allowed to complete the FAFSA application online because of online privacy laws. So those students would have to complete one by paper, and it's only if you're 13 or younger. And I've only had one student that has fallen into that category that was 10 years old a few years back.
Okay. So it happens.
It happens.
It happens. Speaking of minors, I know you just spoke on those confidentiality laws and that why it's important to have that communication open between parents and the students. But when it comes to minors, are those confidentiality laws still in place? Is that still the same process that parents would need to go through with their students?
Yeah, so once students get into college, they are then governed by FERPA, the Family Educational Rights to Privacy Act, which protects student information. So that information can only be released to the parents or the third parties with the student's consent. So even if they are minors, then those rules still apply. And so that's usually another discussion point to have with students once the student gets into college. They will hear about this more from the various areas that has student record information, admissions, registrar, financial aid, student accounting. So anybody that has direct access to personal information will be protecting those records. And we have releases that the students can complete and authorize us to talk to their parents and share that information with them.
Okay. If they wanted to get those releases, how would they go about finding those to fill them out?
So the main release for FERPA is part of the registrar's office. And they do have that information. It's actually inside of Oasis, but they also list it on their website as well. So if you just Google USF privacy, then it will come up. And they will be able to access it there. The financial aid information is a little bit more complicated because we have access to financial data in addition to your personal data. And so we have a separate authorization form that has to be completed, which we keep on our website, that students can fill out and provide the information for their parents on the application, on the form, and include their super secret passphrase that their parent will have to answer in order for us to discuss information with them.
Okay. Well, we do have a few questions coming in, so I'm going to take a break from our list of questions to ask some of the ones that we're getting online. Cole says that he is from Texas and that out-of-state tuition is a little steep. They were wondering if we did anything like scholarship matching with other schools.
So, Cole, that is a question really for the Office of Admissions, because typically the way that the scholarships work here, even for out-of-state students, is those scholarships are awarded to students that are out of state from the Office of Admission, and those will typically carry a tuition waiver with them. So to waive the out-of-state portion of their tuition, so the student ends up only paying the in-state portion. So I'm going to assume by the question that you don't have that particular type of scholarship. So my advice would be definitely to follow up with the Office of Admissions at admissions@usf.edu to see if they can give you some more context.
Okay. And then we also have a question from Ella. She asked, if you know you won't qualify for any financial aid, do you still need to fill out the FAFSA to be eligible for any merit or scholarship funds?
So that's a two-part question. I love that question. So I'll do the first part.
Okay.
I'll do the second part. You typically do not have to complete the FAFSA to be able to receive any merit-based aid, so scholarships or things of that nature. However, there are instances where the school may strongly encourage a student to complete that FAFSA application because they want to make sure that the student has as much aid as possible, because in most cases, a scholarship is not going to cover an entire bill or for a cost of attendance for a student. And then back to the first part, if you aren't going to qualify, and by that you mean you're not going to qualify for any grant funding, and if you complete the FAFSA, you will only qualify for loans, my advice is always for students and families to complete the FAFSA application anyway. And the reason for this is because your financial situation can change at any minute. A family's financial situation can change. So if a parent loses a job, or they get sick, or they can't work, anything that affects the income, then if you're able to complete the application, we can reevaluate the family's income based on what it is at that particular point in time. So it's always to your advantage to go out and just apply anyway. It makes a lot less paperwork on the back end if you need to actually seek any sources for income from us or financial aid from us to help meet those needs.
So when in doubt, just fill it out.
Just fill it out.
All right, guys, keep sending in any questions you have for Damien. Thank you for sharing those, Ella and Cole. Back to our list of questions, though, Damien. What happens to a student's tuition payment if they happen to withdraw from one of their classes?
Well, that is a financial aid. It depends. So because there are different types of financial aid that have different requirements. So typically, dropping a course or withdrawing from a course may or may not have an effect on you. So for instance, if you are a student that is a in-state student that receives Florida Bright Futures, for example, and you withdraw from a course, then the student has the responsibility to repay those funds that they had used to pay for that course initially. So if that does not happen, then the student is not able to renew their scholarship for any subsequent terms or year, excuse me. So it's very important to kind of know what those conditions are. And what we always advise students to do is if they're thinking about dropping a class or withdrawing from school altogether, is definitely talk to the financial aid office so we can go through those options. Because not all of the financial aid programs carry the same requirements. And so all of those are going to be different, and you really have to know all of those details before you make that decision.
I do want to pause for just a second because Jack did ask a question regarding FAFSA being delayed, and I just want to make a little bit of an announcement that we're going to get to that. We know that's a hot topic for many families and students right now, so we are going to get to that, but we're saving that to the end. So if you do have any questions related to that, feel free to drop them in the chat. We're not ignoring you, but we will get to it at the end of this segment. When it comes to the university, how does the university handle the distribution of funds from private loans versus public loans? And then the second part of that question is there a difference in when that student will receive the money from either of those loans?
Okay, so just the private loans first. So if students are receiving private loans, these are actually loans that are coming from a banking institution. So the student applies for them, they have to qualify, meet credit requirements, sometimes have to have a cosigner to be able to get the loans. When they do that, it's all going to be dependent on when that process is started and completed. Because in order for those funds to be received, we actually have to make those awards manually. So if a student gets a private loan approval, then we have to go in, put it in to the system, and then send the information back to the bank. But at the same time, the student also has to send back their application and promissory note that they're going to repay those funds. And so the top-end processing time on all of that can be up to 20 business days. What we always advise students to do, if you know you're going to need a private loan, is to apply for it early. So at least a month or to 45 days out from the start of the semester. And if that is done on schedule, there are no issues, it's done on time, then those funds will be sent to the school at the regular time that we receive all of the other funds. So if the student has other government funds from the FAFSA, then we will receive those funds at the same time, typically at the end of drop add. But in order for students to receive those funds, they also, if they're first-time borrowers, have to complete entrance counseling and a master promissory note with the federal government, with the Department of Education. So as long as those are also done, you don't have to do them as far out, so you can usually do those about a week in advance if you need to. Then we will receive those funds and have them ready to be paid at the end of the first week of classes as well.
And I know that's a lot of information to kind of process through. So is there a website or any resource that students or families can go to that kind of details all the different kind of loans that are available for them?
Yeah, so on our website, we actually have a section for different types of aid. So we have a section for student loans specifically. We have information there for the subsidized, unsubsidized direct loans for students. We also have information for parent loans, the PLUS loan for parents, and for private loans, so if students are going out to seek those. The only thing I will add for the private loans is we just have information there, so we're not allowed to provide a list of banks to borrow from, so students will have to do some due diligence and research to see what they can find that is best for them in repayment information and interest rates and things of that nature.
Okay, we have a few more questions coming in. Regarding financial aid, is there any scholarship or grant that can cover housing?
It's going to depend on how much financial aid the student receives. So if the student receives enough financial aid to cover their tuition, the next thing that goes toward their payment is housing if they live on campus, and then meal plan if they have a on-campus meal plan. And then textbooks, if you decide to use your funding to use in the bookstore. So if the student has enough money to cover all of those things, then yes, it can go to pay for housing. And one example that I can give is that if a student has Florida Bright Futures, and they also have Florida Prepaid, even if they don't have Florida Prepaid that's built for housing, they can use both of those, and some of that excess money that they will have after tuition is paid will go towards their housing costs. And so students would then just use whatever other sources of money that they have to pay for anything else that's left on their bill. So it's entirely possible. It happens quite often.
Okay. And I know you just mentioned Florida Prepaid plan. We do have a comment in the chat. They're asking, I have a Florida prepaid plan. What do I need to do to get those funds to the school?
This may be the best news I can deliver all night is that you actually do not have to do anything other than the student registering for classes here at the university, because the Student Accounting Services Office will actually download the entire roster of students that are coming to the university from Tallahassee, and your student's name will be in that file, and they will actually take care of invoicing Florida Prepaid to get those funds released for your student. So it is very clean, very clear. Nothing else has to be done.
Best news ever, right? You're done. You're good to go. We have a question from Zay. They asked, I've been awarded the 75% Bright Futures for summer. I do not remember if I completed the 2023-2024 FAFSA, but if I do so, will I be eligible for more financial aid or scholarships and grants?
Okay, so that's a good question. So the first thing I would advise you to do is to just log back into your studentaid.gov account to make sure you did complete the 2023-24 FAFSA for the summer. If you did do that, and that has been submitted and you listed USF on the application, you should already have information from the financial aid office that says what other types of aid you would be getting in addition to the medallion scholarship. So if you've done everything, then it should be there waiting, but I would advise you just to check it to make sure. You can also check in OASIS, and if the FAFSA has been received, we will have it posted there so you can see it as well.
Okay, the questions keep coming in for you, Damien, so you must be given some great insight tonight. Someone asked, I've received the USF Green and Gold Directors Award. I've also applied for additional scholarships. When will we get notified for additional scholarships that we've applied for?
Another good question. So the additional scholarships, if you applied for those through our Award Spring Scholarship Portal here at the university, the different colleges and departments will be making those decisions. They use their own timetables, their own calendars to do so. So typically you will start to hear about them later on into the summer. So that will come back to our FAFSA delay that we're going to talk about at the end.
We're getting to it. We're almost there. I know that you kind of touched on this with the Florida prepaid plan question, but I just want to make sure this is clear in case that's not the aid that someone received. But once a student accepts any form of financial aid, is there anything that they need to do after that point, after they've accepted it?
So the only types of financial aid that have to be accepted are student loans, the federal direct loans, either subsidized or unsubsidized, and federal work study. So those are the only programs that have to be accepted. If they are grants, if they are scholarships, those are accepted for you. However, as a part of that process, we also require students to do terms and conditions. We didn't accept those that are inside of the OASIS system. If the student also has other USF scholarships, then they will have a separate terms and conditions just for that scholarship because they have different requirements compared to the other types of aid. So there's lots of requirements for students to be able to receive money and then to keep money. So students really have to kind of pay attention to that. But outside of those three funds, three types of aid, there's nothing else that has to be done because I already mentioned the promissory note and entrance counseling for student loan borrowers.
Okay, well, Damien, it's time.
Okay.
We got to talk about it. So we know that a lot of families and students are dealing with FAFSA challenges at the current moment. So let's just start by talking about some of the changes that have transpired to bring us to where we are today.
Okay, well, I'll see if I can boil it down. In 2019, the U.S. Congress passed an act that required the Department of Education to simplify the FAFSA, so to make it easier for students and families to complete. And they also changed the actual formula that's used to determine how much aid students receive. So in the current FAFSA that we're in right now, we're using as that index the expected family contribution, or EFC. So they have now changed that going forward for 2024-25 FAFSA to the student aid index, and it's a completely different measure of students' eligibility. They also project that more students will qualify for grant funding. So to my student that asked earlier, I know I won't qualify for anything, should I apply? And this is one of the reasons why, because the new formula is going to make more students eligible for grant funding that were not eligible before. And so that's really a positive in addition to the FAFSA being simpler to file. So where we are right now is the FAFSA was released on New Year's Eve of last year. And once it was released, we're working through and waiting on the department to actually start sending us all of the information from every student that's applied. So if you did apply over the last couple of months, you should start to see inside of the studentaid.gov system that your FAFSA has been processed by the Department of Education. And there will also be a message that says that that application has been sent or will be sent to your school up in the upcoming weeks. And so where we are in the financial aid offices is we're watching those applications come in. They're coming in on a rolling basis. So we don't have all of the applications for every student that has completed it yet. So we're expecting to have them in the next few weeks. And then once we have all the applications, we will then start working on getting the financial aid award offers completed and out to students so they will know what financial aid to be expecting to receive for the upcoming year.
Whew, we got it out. And I think it's a lot of stress for a lot of people, but I know that you and your team are helping people walk through this, really holding people's hands, trying to help them get to that finish line, because this has been a new process for everyone involved. So I know this has been a big learning curve, and thank you for everything your team is doing to help these families and students. Jack asked, related to this topic, what about extensions for deposits? And I know that your team is keeping everyone informed and keeping partners across the university informed, and everyone's kind of working together to make sure that everyone is accommodated. So as far as where we're at right now, what extensions are in place?
So as of right now, as of actually Monday of this week, the Office of Admission extended the deposit deadline from May 1st to May 15th. And so as we kind of still navigate through this, I can't say with 100% certainty that that date will change again, because that will be up to the administration in those areas if that is something that will happen. So right now it is May 15th for the admissions deposit deadline for our incoming class of students.
And I know for housing, Jack also asked about housing. Right now, we're working with the financial aid office as well. We have a free cancellation period for our incoming freshmen up until April 14th. And we're working with your office to determine where that deadline needs to be. So the best thing for parents, families, students to do is to continue checking in with these offices, because just because this is the date we're saying today, that deadline or date may change a little bit. So just keeping everyone in the loop with what's going on, because this is an evolving situation. So we understand the position that families and students are in right now, and we're doing all we can to work with you guys through this challenging situation. I do have a few questions for you unrelated to FAFSA, so can we do a little bit of a 180 to go back to some of these questions? We have a question from Kelly. She was asking, how does the federal work study work?
So federal work study is a need-based financial aid program that you qualify for off of the FAFSA. And in order to actually use those funds, so the student is actually given an allocation. So typically our incoming freshmen receive $7,000 to $8,000 federal work study funding. And what they have to do, they actually have to work to earn that money while they're studying. So the student would look on Handshake here at the university and look for an open job, apply for it, whatever suits their interests. And if the hiring unit hires them, then they will actually be able to use their federal work study to work in that college or department, and they will slowly deduct from that allocation that they receive, and they will be paid every 2 weeks to be able to get those funds, which they then use for whatever expenses or incidentals that they may need for the time that they're in school.
Okay. And then we have another question. They're asking, do I qualify for federal aid as a non-citizen? If not, what are my options for seeking other financial aid or grants, and where can I find that information?
Okay, so that is a interesting question because there's more layers to that. Because in order to actually receive financial aid, the student has to qualify as either a citizen or, in financial aid terminology, an eligible non-citizen. So you didn't have the eligible in the first part of the question, so I'm not sure what the actual status is. But on the actual FAFSA application, when you complete the application and you're going through it, and it asks you for citizenship status, it will also give you a listing of what the eligible non-citizen statuses are if you answer that question that way. So I would advise you to go back into that application, take a look at that, or you could just Google it and just say FAFSA eligible non-citizen, and it will bring you to the page at studentaid.gov that will list all of those requirements for you. And if you meet one of those, then you're able to complete a FAFSA and see what aid you can qualify for.
Perfect. Well, those are all the questions that we have in the comments that we had for you today as well. And I feel like if we're getting anything from these comments that are coming in, people are getting their questions answered. So Damien, thank you for all of the knowledge you have shared with us tonight. If people are still, a little nervous about this whole situation, they still have questions or they're unsure when it comes to financial aid, where's the best place for them to go to get those answers? How can they contact your office?
Yes, so the best place to contact our office is going to the financial aid website. We have a contact us page. There it will list our information so you can call us on the phone. If you're local, you can visit us in the office. Right now, it's not a lot coming in. So if you do have questions, feel free to reach out to us and we can answer those questions. Just take your time, get it in as early as possible. That would be my other piece of advice. We will answer the same question 100 times. It's fine. Just make sure that you get that question answered because it's an unknown to you, so you make sure that you ask it.
And as we wrap this up, Damien, what is your words of wisdom that you want to leave our audience with tonight? Because, navigating financial aid, it can be confusing, it can be stressful, and then you throw the FAFSA situation in there, but they got to know they have a great team here ready to help them out. So what are your words of wisdom that you want to leave everyone with?
My words of wisdom is always going to be start early. Couple things, read all of the communications, read all of the emails, and just continuously follow up. As long as you're able to do that, then you shouldn't run into any problems. So never delay in getting anything done, especially when it comes to money.
That's right. Damien, we appreciate you. Thank you for your time tonight, and thank you for all the insight. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
If you have any further questions for Damien, feel free to reach out to him with the contact info that he's provided, or you can reach out to us and we'll point you in the right direction. If you have any housing-related questions, please reach out to our office on social media, by email at housing@usf.edu, or by phone at 813-974-0001. Be sure to join us on April 3rd at 6 p.m. for the next episode of USF Housing Live, where we'll discuss orientation and Bull Hall. You can watch on our Facebook or YouTube page, or the USF Parent and Family Engagement Facebook page. USF Housing Live is produced by Housing and Residential Education at the University of South Florida in Tampa. Our motto is best place to live, best place to work, best place to learn. Thank you to tonight's guest for joining me this evening, and thank you to our production crew, to you, our viewers, and of course, there's always just one last thing. Go Bulls. Good night, everyone.